The wheelchair girl was lost and hungry, and the homeless man did something that moved everyone. Emily Johnson was crying softly as she pushed the wheels of her chair through the central square of Denver. Her 8 years of life hadn't prepared her to be alone on the street as night began to fall, with her stomach growling from hunger, and not knowing where her grandmother Dorothy was. It was then that she saw a man sitting on a park bench, wearing torn clothes and holding a small piece of bread in his trembling hands. When their eyes met, something inexplicable happened. "Are you hungry, little one?" asked the man, with a hoarse but gentle voice. Emily hesitated for a moment. Her grandmother always said not to talk to strangers, but something in that man's gaze reassured her. She nodded, feeling tears stream down her face. Without hesitation, the homeless man broke his only piece of bread in half and extended the larger portion to the girl. "Here, you need it more than I do." "But it's your dinner," whispered Emily, touched by the gesture. "Don't worry about me. A child should never go hungry." As Emily ate the piece of bread, the man noticed a medical bracelet on her wrist. Even with his vision blurred by years on the street, he managed to read some words that made him swallow hard. "What's your name?" he asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "Emily Johnson. I live with Grandma Dorothy because my parents didn't want me after I got sick." The girl's words pierced the man's heart like a blade. He knew that pain of abandonment all too well, that feeling of being rejected when you needed support the most. "Where's your grandmother?" he continued, trying to focus on the present. "We came shopping downtown, but she went into a store and told me to wait here. That was a long time ago, and now it's dark and I'm scared," Emily sobbed. At that moment, some people passing through the square began to notice the scene. 2 women stopped and whispered to each other, pointing at the homeless man and the child. One of them pulled out her phone and started recording. "How beautiful, everyone. Look at this touching scene," said a woman's voice, loud enough for other passers-by to hear. The man was bothered by the attention, but Emily didn't seem to notice. She was focused on eating slowly, savoring every crumb as if it were the most precious food in the world. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. "What's your name?" asked Emily, after swallowing the last piece. The man hesitated. It had been so long since anyone asked his name that for a moment he almost forgot what it was. "Michael. Michael Davis." "Dr. Michael?" she asked, reading something on the bracelet he wore on his wrist, half hidden by his torn sleeve. Michael quickly pulled his sleeve to cover the medical identification bracelet he still carried, even after all these years. It was a habit he couldn't break, a reminder of who he used to be. "No, I'm not a doctor," he murmured. But Emily was too clever for her age. Pain had taught her to observe people more carefully. "You talk differently from other homeless people I've seen, and your hands, they're clean, even with dirty clothes." Michael looked at his own hands. It was true. Even though he'd lived on the streets for 5 years, he'd never been able to completely abandon some hygiene habits he'd learned in medicine. It was automatic. Before he could respond, a man approached them with heavy steps. It was Mr. Johnson, owner of the snack bar on the corner of the square. "Hey, you two! Get out of here right now!" he shouted, pointing his finger at Michael. "You're using that child to get money, you bum." "That's not true." Michael stood up, instinctively positioning himself between Johnson and Emily. "I was just helping her." "Helping? Do you think I'm stupid? Everyone knows you people use children to play on people's sympathies. Get out of my way before I call someone." Emily, frightened, grabbed Michael's sleeve. "He's not doing anything wrong. He gave me food when I was hungry." "Shut up, girl. You don't understand anything." Johnson turned to the people who had stopped to watch the argument. "Do you want a decent diner here, or would you prefer it becomes a hangout for bums and troublemakers?" Some people in the group agreed. Others seemed bothered by the merchant's aggressiveness. Michael felt the familiar humiliation rising in his chest, but this time it was different. He wasn't alone. "Come on, Emily. Let's go find your grandmother," he said, gently pushing the wheelchair away from the conflict. As they moved away, Michael heard Johnson shout, And don't come back here, this square isn't a place for deadbeats. Emily was quiet, but Michael could feel she was processing everything that had happened. When they reached the other side of the square, she finally spoke. Are people mean to you because you live on the street? The simple question carried a wisdom that only suffering could teach. Michael stopped pushing the chair and knelt in front of the girl. Some people think they know who we are just by looking. They don't stop to think that everyone has a story. What's your story? Emily asked, with a child's natural curiosity. Michael felt a lump in his throat. How could he explain to an 8-year-old that he had once been a respected doctor, that he had a family, that he lost everything because of a mistake he didn't make? It's a very long story, he said finally. I like long stories. Grandma always tells me long stories before bedtime. At that moment, Michael noticed Emily's medical bracelet more carefully. What he had seen earlier had bothered him, but now, with more light from a nearby lamppost, he could read it clearly. Spinal muscular atrophy, type 2. Required medication, Spirigen. Emergency contact, Dorothy Johnson. Michael's heart almost stopped. He knew that condition, he knew the treatment, and he knew exactly how much it cost. Emily, do you take medicine every day? I do. But Grandma said it's very expensive and we might have to stop. She cries sometimes when she thinks I'm not watching. Michael closed his eyes. The medication Emily needed cost over $200,000 per year. For a simple family, it was practically impossible to maintain the treatment. How long has it been since you had your medicine? 2 weeks. Grandma said she's waiting for some help, but I hear her crying at night. She thinks I'm going to get worse. The situation was more serious than Michael had imagined. 2 weeks without medication could already be causing deterioration in the girl's condition. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. It was risky, but it might be the only way to help Emily. Emily, would you like me to try to help you and your grandmother? How? She asked, with a mixture of hope and skepticism in her eyes. I'm going to tell people about your situation. Maybe some of them will want to help. But you said people don't stop to listen to stories. Some don't, but others do. And sometimes one good person is enough to change everything. Michael began pushing Emily's wheelchair through the square, stopping people who passed by. It was humiliating, but he was willing to swallow his pride for the girl. Excuse me, could you hear about this young lady? He said to each person. Most averted their eyes and quickened their pace. Some threw coins without even stopping to listen. Others looked with suspicion, as if Michael was trying to run a scam. After almost an hour of trying, an elegant lady stopped in front of them. She appeared to be around 60, with well-kept grey hair and expensive clothes. What's wrong with the girl? She asked in a polite but cautious voice. Michael quickly explained that Emily was lost and needed expensive medication. The lady listened attentively, but there was something in her expression he couldn't decipher. And who are you to her? The lady asked. I'm just someone who wants to help. The lady studied Michael's face more carefully. Suddenly, her eyes widened and she took a step back. My God! Michael Davis! Michael felt his blood run cold. Someone had recognized him. After 5 years of living invisible, someone knew who he was. No, Dr. Michael Davis, the lady exclaimed, but quickly lowered her voice when she noticed she was drawing attention. I knew I recognized you from somewhere. You operated on my husband 6 years ago, heart surgery at Mercy Hospital. Michael wanted to disappear. He wished the ground would open up and swallow him, but Emily was watching him curiously. Doctor, she whispered. My husband is alive thanks to you, the lady continued. We looked for you after all that mess at the hospital, but no one knew where you were. Michael knew exactly what mess she was referring to, the case that destroyed his career, his reputation, and his life. Ma'am, please, he murmured. No, doctor. I know you were treated unfairly. My husband always said that. That patient was already beyond hope when he arrived at the hospital. Michael felt tears burning his eyes. For 5 years, no one had spoken of his innocence. Everyone was certain he was guilty. What happened to you? How? The lady looked at Michael's torn clothes. "It's a long story," he said, echoing the same words he had told Emily. "And this girl?" Michael briefly explained about finding Emily lost and about her medical condition. The lady listened with growing attention. "Doctor, do you still have the medical knowledge to evaluate her case?" Michael hesitated. He hadn't practiced medicine in 5 years. Did he still remember everything? "I can try to give an opinion," he finally said. He knelt in front of Emily again, and with the gentleness of an experienced doctor, began asking questions about her symptoms, how she felt, what had changed since she stopped taking the medication. As he talked with Emily, something inside Michael began to awaken. It was like riding a bike. The knowledge was all there, just dormant. "Your condition is serious, Emily, but manageable with the right treatment," he said after a few minutes. "The problem is, the medicine is very expensive." "How much does it cost?" asked the lady. Michael did the math in his head. "Approximately $200,000 a year." The lady sighed heavily. "That is a lot of money indeed, but maybe I know some people who can help." At that moment, Emily pointed to a store across the square. "Grandma!" she shouted. A lady about 70 years old came staggering out of the store, visibly dizzy. Michael and the elegant lady ran to her, with Emily wheeling her chair as fast as she could. "Grandma, are you okay?" Emily shouted, worried. Dorothy Johnson seemed about to faint. Michael instinctively held her arm and began checking her vital signs. "How are you feeling, Ma'am?" he asked in his firm doctor's voice. "Dizzy, very dizzy, and with chest pain," Dorothy murmured. Michael looked at the elegant lady. "We need to call an ambulance now." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. While the elegant lady called 911 emergency, Michael helped Dorothy sit on the ground, placing her in the recovery position. His medical instincts had completely taken over. "Do you have a history of heart problems?" he asked. "I do, but I don't have money for a doctor," Dorothy replied with difficulty. "And diabetes?" "That too." Michael sighed. The situation was more complicated than he had imagined. Dorothy was clearly having a diabetic crisis, possibly with heart complications. "Emily, does your grandmother take diabetes medication?" "She did, but a month ago she stopped because she said my medicine is more important." Michael felt a punch to his stomach. Dorothy was sacrificing her own health to try to maintain her granddaughter's treatment. The ambulance arrived within minutes. When the paramedics got out, Michael automatically began relaying information about Dorothy's condition as if he were still an active doctor. Possible diabetic crisis with cardiac complication. She stopped treatment a month ago. Vital signs stable at the moment, but she needs glucose and cardiac monitoring. One of the paramedics looked at Michael strangely. "Are you a doctor?" Michael hesitated for a moment. I am... It's complicated." "He saved my husband," the elegant lady interjected. "Dr. Michael Davis." The older paramedic's eyes widened. "Dr. Davis, you disappeared a few years ago. I knew you from Mercy Hospital." Michael nodded, embarrassed. His former life was coming back to haunt him, but this time it was different. "We can talk later. Right now the important thing is to take care of the lady." As the paramedics prepared Dorothy for transport, she grabbed Michael's hand. "Please, take care of Emily. She has no one else." "I'll go to the hospital with you," Michael said without hesitation. "You can't, sir," said the paramedic. "Family only." He is my doctor," Dorothy said weakly. "Please." Emily held Michael's other hand. "Please come with us, I'm scared." The elegant lady approached. "I'll go too, I can give you a ride back later." At the hospital, Michael felt strange. The walls that had once been his second home now seemed haunted by painful memories, but Emily needed him, and that was more important than his discomfort. While Dorothy was being treated in the emergency room, Michael talked with Emily in the waiting room. "Is my grandmother going to be okay?" she asked. "She'll be fine. But Emily, I need to tell you something important." Michael took a deep breath. It was time to be honest with the girl. I really was a doctor, a long time ago. Why did you stop? Something bad happened to me at work. People thought I did something wrong even though I didn't. Emily processed the information for a few moments. Is that why you live on the street? Yes. But you still know how to be a doctor. Michael smiled for the first time in a long while. It's just like riding a bike. You never completely forget. At that moment, a doctor came out of the emergency area and approached them. Are you family of Mrs. Dorothy Johnson? I'm her granddaughter, said Emily. The doctor looked at Michael curiously. And you? I'm a friend. I was helping when she fell ill. Do you have medical knowledge? Your information to the paramedics was very precise. Michael nodded without explaining details. Mrs. Dorothy is stabilized. It was indeed a diabetic crisis. She will be hospitalized for a few days so we can adjust her medication. Can I see her? For now she's sleeping, but you can visit her tomorrow morning. Michael looked at Emily. Where would she spend the night? Emily, do you have other relatives? No, just Grandma. My parents. They abandoned me when they found out I would need a wheelchair. The pain in the girl's voice echoed in Michael's chest. He knew the pain of family abandonment well. The elegant lady who had remained discreetly nearby approached. Emily can stay at my house tonight. I have a room on the ground floor. I can't accept, Michael said quickly. You've already done so much. Doctor, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Barbara Wilson. My husband is alive thanks to you. It's the least I can do. Michael vaguely remembered the surgery. It had been a complex but successful case. And besides, Barbara continued, I have a proposal to make to you. What kind of proposal? I know influential people in the medical field, people who can help clear your name. Michael felt his heart speed up. After 5 years, he had given up on any possibility of rehabilitation. Mrs. Barbara, I appreciate it, but don't say no yet. Think of it as a way to help Emily. She needs someone with medical knowledge to guide her treatment. Michael looked at Emily, who was watching him expectantly. What do you think, Emily? I think people need to know that you're a good doctor. The girl's simple words touched Michael deeply. For years he had convinced himself that maybe he really was guilty of what happened. Maybe he was a bad doctor. All right, he said finally. But first let's take care of your grandmother and your treatment. Barbara smiled. Perfect. And doctor, you can stay in a guest room at my house until we get a better situation. Michael was about to protest, but Emily held his hand. Please, I feel safer when you're around. That night, in Barbara's comfortable home, Michael took his first hot shower in months. Barbara had arranged clean clothes for him, clothes that had belonged to her husband. When he came out of the bathroom, he found Emily in the living room, still in her wheelchair looking out the window. Can't sleep? He asked. I'm worried about Grandma. Michael sat on the couch next to her wheelchair. She'll be fine, her body just needs time to recover. Michael, can I ask you a question? Of course. Why were you living on the street if you're a doctor? Michael sighed. It was a fair question, and Emily deserved an honest answer. 5 years ago, a patient of mine died during surgery. His family said I made a mistake, that I was negligent. There was a lawsuit, an investigation. Even though I did nothing wrong, my reputation was destroyed. And your family? Michael felt a familiar pain in his chest. My wife. She couldn't handle the pressure. The scandal, people's comments, the difficult financial situation. She left me and took our son. You have a son? Had. He would be about your age now. I haven't seen him in 5 years. Emily was silent for a few minutes, processing the information. What was his name? Ethan Davis. Do you miss him? Michael felt his eyes tear up. Every day. When Grandma gets better, will you try to find your son? Emily's simple question planted a seed that Michael didn't know still existed inside him. For years he had convinced himself that it would be better for Ethan not to have him around. But maybe... I don't know if he'll want to see me, Michael said honestly. I wish my parents wanted to see me, Emily said softly, even after everything that happened. Michael stood up and knelt beside Emily's wheelchair. "Emily, what your parents did was wrong. You are a wonderful girl, and any father should be proud to have a daughter like you. Do you think your son thinks that about you too?" Michael had never thought about it that way. What if Ethan missed him too? What if he had also been a victim of their separation? "I don't know," he answered, "but maybe it's time to find out." The next day, Michael and Emily went to visit Dorothy at the hospital. The lady was visibly better, but still weak. "Emily, my dear granddaughter," she said upon seeing the girl. "How did you sleep last night?" "Well, Grandma, I stayed at Mrs. Barbara's house, and Michael stayed there too." Dorothy looked at Michael with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did." "No need to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." "That's not true." Dorothy shook her head. "Most people would have just passed by." The doctor in charge of Dorothy approached the group. "Mrs. Dorothy, I need to speak with the family about the treatment." "Michael can listen," Dorothy said quickly. He's like family." The doctor seemed hesitant but agreed. "You have uncontrolled type 2 diabetes and the beginning of heart problems. You'll need regular follow-up and continuous medication. The problem is, we know about the family's financial situation." Michael stepped forward. "Doctor, are there government programs or assistance that can help?" "There are some, but the waiting lists are long and the bureaucracy is complicated." "And what about Emily's treatment?" "That's even more complex. Her medication is extremely expensive and rarely covered by social programs." Michael saw the despair in Dorothy's eyes. It was an impossible situation. She needed to choose between her own life and her granddaughter's treatment. "Doctor," Michael continued, "if I helped navigate the bureaucracy to make the right requests, what would be the chance of getting at least part of the medication?" The doctor looked at him curiously. "Do you work in the field?" "I used to. I was a doctor." "What specialty?" "Cardiac surgery." The doctor's eyes widened. "You wouldn't happen to be Dr. Michael Davis, would you?" Michael prepared for the worst. His reputation followed him everywhere. "Yes." "My goodness, you participated in a surgery on my professor in college, Dr. Edward Collins. It was an amazing case. Everyone talked about it at the time." Michael vaguely remembered the case. It had been years before the scandal that destroyed his career. "How is Dr. Collins?" "Very well, thanks to you. He always talks about the precision of your technique." Michael felt a strange emotion. It had been so long since anyone spoke positively about his work. "Dr. Davis, may I ask, are you still practicing?" Michael hesitated. How to explain his situation without going into painful details? "Not at the moment. I had some professional problems." The doctor seemed to understand it was a delicate matter. "If you'd like, I can connect you with some people who work with medical assistants for special cases. Maybe we can get something for Mrs. Dorothy and for Emily." "I would really appreciate that." After the hospital visit, Barbara took Michael and Emily to have lunch at a nearby restaurant. It felt strange for Michael to be in a normal social environment after so long. "Michael, I spoke with some contacts last night," Barbara said as they waited for their order to arrive. "About what?" "About your case. About what really happened that day at the hospital." Michael felt his stomach tighten. He rarely talked about that day, but maybe it was time to face the past. "What did you find out?" "I spoke with Dr. Richard Miller. He was present during the surgery." Michael remembered Richard. They had been friends before the scandal. And what did he say? That he never believed the accusations, that you did everything that could be done under those circumstances. "But it wasn't enough to defend me back then." He said he was afraid, that the pressure from the patient's family was too great and there were political interests involved. Michael nodded bitterly. He remembered the pressure, the veiled threats, the feeling of being alone against the world. "Barbara, I appreciate your help, but that was a long time ago. People have moved on." "Dr. Richard hasn't moved on. He says he regrets not speaking the truth back then every single day." Emily, who had been listening to the conversation quietly, finally spoke. "Michael, sometimes people do wrong things because they're scared, But when we grow up, we realize we need to fix our mistakes. The girl's unexpected wisdom surprised both Michael and Barbara. "You're very smart, Emily," Barbara said. "Grandma always says that when we go through hard things, we learn to understand people better." Michael looked at Emily with admiration. Despite being so young and having faced so much suffering, she had a mature perspective on life. "Emily, you're right," he said. "Maybe it's time to give people a chance to fix the mistakes of the past." That afternoon, Barbara organized a meeting at her home. Dr. Richard Miller agreed to come talk with Michael in person. When Richard arrived, Michael felt a mix of nervousness and anticipation. They hadn't seen each other in 5 years. "Michael," Richard said, visibly emotional, "I need to ask for your forgiveness." Michael wasn't expecting those words. "Richard, no. Let me speak. What happened that day was unfair. You did everything right. The patient arrived at the hospital in critical condition, but you fought until the end to save him. Why didn't you say that back then?" Richard lowered his eyes, ashamed. "Because I was a coward. The patient's family had political connections. They threatened my career too. I chose to protect myself instead of defending the truth." Michael felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger for the injustice he had suffered, relief for finally hearing the truth from someone who was there. "And now? Why do you want to speak now?" "Because I can't live with this guilt anymore. And because I found out you're living on the streets. A doctor of your skill doesn't deserve that." Emily, who was in the corner of the room playing with a tablet Barbara had lent her, approached the conversation. "Mr. Richard, can you help Michael become a doctor again?" Richard smiled at the girl. "I'll do everything I can, little one. He helped me when I was lost and hungry, and he took care of my grandma when she got sick. He's a very good doctor." Emily's words touched Richard deeply. "Michael, she's right. You were always an excellent doctor, and from what I see, you're still an excellent person." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like the video and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. In the following days, Richard began mobilizing old contacts to review Michael's case. It wouldn't be easy. Medical rehabilitation processes are complex and time-consuming, but it was a start. Meanwhile, Michael dedicated himself to helping Emily and Dorothy. Using his knowledge and Barbara's help, he managed to speed up some bureaucratic processes to get subsidized medication. A week later, Dorothy was discharged from the hospital. Michael had managed to organize a treatment plan she could afford, combining subsidized medication with diet and exercise guidance. For Emily, the situation was more complex. The medication was so expensive that even with subsidies it was still out of the family's reach. "Is there any way to get this medication for free?" Michael asked the doctor who was treating Emily. "There's a government experimental program, but there are very few spots and the criteria are very strict." "What kind of criteria?" "The family needs to prove financial need. The child's condition must be evaluated by a medical board, and there's a waiting list that could take months." Michael sighed. Months was too long for Emily to go without medication. That evening at Barbara's house, Michael talked to Emily about the situation. "Emily, we'll get your medication, but it might take a little while." "Do you think I'll get worse?" Michael hesitated. He didn't want to lie to the girl, but he also didn't want to scare her unnecessarily. "We'll do everything we can to prevent that, and in the meantime, we'll take very good care of you." "Michael, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Have you ever tried to look for your son?" The question caught Michael off guard. He thought about Ethan every day, but had never had the courage to look for him. "No. I'm afraid he might not want to see me." "Or maybe he's afraid you don't want to see him." Michael looked at Emily with admiration. How could an 8-year-old child be so wise? "Do you think I should look for him?" "I think if I had a father who wanted me back, I'd be very happy." Emily's words echoed in Michael's mind all night. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to fully face the past. The next day, Michael made a decision he had been avoiding for 5 years. He asked Barbara for help locating his ex-wife and son. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Barbara asked. "I'm not sure of anything. But Emily made me realize that sometimes we need to have the courage to try, even when we're scared." Barbara got the address through old contacts. Michael's ex-wife, Jessica, lived in a middle-class condominium in Chicago. Ethan was 13 now. Michael spent 2 days mentally rehearsing what he would say. Richard had offered to go with him, but Michael knew it was something he needed to do alone. On the morning of the visit, Emily insisted on giving him something for luck. "Take this," she said, handing him a small drawing she had made. It was a man in a white coat holding a child's hand. "It's you and your son," she explained. Michael felt his eyes tear up. "Thank you, Emily. I'll take it with me." The trip to Chicago took 2 hours. Michael had never felt so nervous in his life, not even during the most complex surgeries. When he arrived at the condominium, his hands were shaking. The doorman called Jessica's apartment, but she wasn't home. It was Ethan who answered. "Hello? Ethan?" Michael could barely speak. It was his son's voice, now deeper, like a teenager's. "Who is this?" It's Dad." Silence on the other end of the line. Michael felt his heart beating so hard he thought it would leap out of his chest. "Dad?" Ethan's voice was filled with emotion. "Hi, son. I'd like to see you, if you want." "Where are you?" "Down here, at the front desk." "You can come up." Michael thanked the doorman and went up to the apartment on shaky legs. When the door opened, he saw his son for the first time in 5 years. Ethan was tall, almost as tall as Michael. He had the same dark eyes as his father, but his expression was cautious. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, son." They looked at each other for a few seconds, both unsure what to say. "Is your mother here?" "She's at work. She won't be back until tonight." Ethan invited Michael inside. The apartment was simple but cozy. Michael noticed some photos on the shelf, Ethan at various ages, but in none of them did Michael appear. "How have you been?" Michael asked, sitting on the sofa. "Good. And you?" Michael hesitated. How could he explain to his son that he had been living on the streets? "I've had some problems, Ethan, big problems. I know Mom told me about the hospital, about what happened. And what did you think?" Ethan looked down. "I didn't know what to believe." "My mother said you did something wrong, but I remembered you as a good father." Michael felt his chest tighten. "And now? What do you believe?" "I don't know. I want to hear your side." Michael told Ethan the whole story. The medical case, the accusations, the lawsuit, losing his job, the destruction of his reputation. And he also told him about the last 5 years, the depression, life on the streets, the despair. Ethan listened to everything in silence. "Dad, why didn't you try to find us before?" "Because I thought it would be better for you. I had nothing to offer. I was destroyed." "But I missed you," Ethan said softly. "Especially on my birthdays. I always hoped you would show up." Michael felt the tears stream down his face. "I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry for giving up on you." Ethan stood up and, to Michael's surprise, hugged him. "I missed you every day," Ethan whispered. Michael hugged his son tightly, feeling 5 years of longing and regret. They talked for hours. Ethan talked about school, his friends, his hobbies. Michael talked about Emily, about how she had changed his perspective on life. "Do you want to meet her?" Michael asked. "I do. She seems special." "She is. She taught me that sometimes the best things in life come when we least expect them." When Jessica came home from work and saw Michael in the living room talking to Ethan, her reaction was one of shock. "What are you doing here?" she asked, visibly tense. "Jessica, I came to see Ethan. I wanted to talk to him." "After 5 years you show up here as if nothing happened." Michael stood up. "I know I have no right to show up like this, but I needed to see my son." "Mom," Ethan intervened. "I wanted to see Dad. We talked a lot." Jessica looked between Michael and Ethan, clearly torn between past anger and love for her son. "Michael, you destroyed our family. You lost everything because of your negligence." "I wasn't negligent, Jessica, and now I can prove it." Michael told her about Richard, about the case review, about the possibility of rehabilitation. "Even if that's true," Jessica said, "that's 5 years lost. 5 years that Ethan grew up without a father. I know, and I know I can't get that time back. But maybe we can build something new from now on. Ethan looked at his mother. Mom, I want my dad back in my life. Jessica sighed heavily. Michael, do you have a place to live? Do you have a job? Michael briefly told her about his current situation, living in Barbara's house, taking care of Emily, working on his own professional rehabilitation. So you still can't offer stability to Ethan? Not yet, but I'm working on it. Michael, Jessica sat down looking tired, I don't want to stop you from seeing Ethan, but I also don't want him to get hurt again if you disappear once more. I won't disappear. Not this time. How can I be sure of that? Michael took out of his pocket the drawing that Emily had made. An 8-year-old girl taught me that it's worth fighting for the people we love, even when everything seems lost. I won't give up again. Jessica looked at the drawing, and for the first time her expression softened. Who made this? Emily, a girl I met, who changed my life. Michael told Jessica and Ethan the whole story of Emily, how he met her in the square, how he took care of her and her grandmother, how she inspired him to fight again. She seems like a special girl, Jessica said. She is, and she made me remember what really matters in life. Ethan asked to see more photos of Emily on Michael's phone. Barbara had sent some during the week. Dad, can I meet her this weekend? Michael looked at Jessica, asking for permission silently. It's okay, she agreed. But Michael, let's take it slow. One step at a time. I completely understand. Michael returned to Denver with a lighter heart than he had felt in years. Ethan wanted to have contact with him again. It was a fresh start. When he arrived at Barbara's house, he found Emily in the living room, watching television. How did it go? She asked immediately. It was good, Emily, very good. My son wants to get to know me again. I knew it. Emily smiled broadly. And does he want to meet me? He does. He's coming here this weekend. Emily clapped her hands, happy. I'll show him my drawings and my books. Michael sat down next to her chair. Emily, I need to thank you. Why? For teaching me to have courage, for showing me that it's worth fighting for the people we love. You taught me the same thing, she replied. When you shared your bread with me, I learned that there is always someone willing to help. That week, there was progress on several fronts. Richard managed to schedule a meeting with the medical board to review Michael's case. Barbara mobilized contacts to speed up the process of obtaining Emily's medication, and Michael began setting up a small makeshift office in Barbara's house to see some familiar patients who had offered to help with his rehabilitation. Over the weekend, Ethan came to visit. The connection between him and Emily was instant. She was delighted to have an older brother, and he was impressed by her intelligence and maturity. Dad, Emily is amazing, Ethan said to Michael privately. She really helped you change. She saved me, Ethan, saved me from myself. During the visit, Ethan helped Michael teach Emily some basic medical things, like how to take blood pressure, how to identify vital signs. It was a playful way to keep her interested in her own treatment. Emily is going to be a doctor when she grows up, Ethan declared at the end of the day. You think so? Emily asked, excited. I'm sure. You already know how to take care of people. The following Monday, Michael received a call that would change everything. It was from the hospital where he worked before the scandal. Dr. Michael, this is Dr. Robert Thompson, the current clinical director of the hospital. Michael remembered Robert. They had worked together years ago. Dr. Robert, how are you? Michael, I got a call from Dr. Richard Miller. He told me about your situation and about the review of your case. Yes, we're working on that. Michael, I'd like to make a proposal. How about you come here so we can talk in person? Michael felt a mix of hope and apprehension. About what exactly? About the possibility of you coming back to work here, temporarily while you sort out the situation with the board. Michael almost dropped the phone. What do you mean? We have an opening for a medical consultant. It's not surgery, but it's a way for you to get back into practice gradually. Dr. Robert, I don't know what to say. Say you'll come talk to me tomorrow. Michael looked at Emily, who was playing on the living room floor. She was watching him curiously. All right, I'll come. After he hung up, Michael told Emily about the call. Does that mean you're going to be a doctor again? Maybe, It's a start. And you'll keep taking care of me? Michael knelt beside her chair. Emily, no matter what happens, I will always take care of you. You're like a daughter to me now. And you're like the father I always wanted to have. Emily's words moved Michael deeply. He realized that by saving Emily that night in the square, she had saved him too. The next day, Michael dressed in the best suit Barbara had managed to get for him and went to the hospital. It felt strange to be back in that environment after so long. Dr. Robert greeted him in his office warmly. Michael, you look much better than I expected. I've had help from some very special people. Michael told me about the girl you're caring for, and about your own situation these past few years. Richard nodded, not going into details. Michael, I need to be honest with you. There's resistance from some people here at the hospital about your return. I understand. But there are also many people who always believed in your innocence, and your reputation as a surgeon was always impeccable until the incident. Michael waited, unsure where the conversation was heading. The proposal is this. You would start as a medical consultant, evaluating complex cases, guiding residents, assisting with difficult diagnoses. No surgery for now, but using all your experience. And the salary? It's not much, but it's enough for you to rebuild your life. Michael thought of Emily, of her expensive medication, of the need to help Dorothy. Dr. Robert, I accept, on one condition. What? I would like to dedicate part of my time to social welfare cases, underprivileged children who need medical follow-up. Robert smiled. Michael, that just confirms we made the right decision. You can start next Monday. Michael left the hospital feeling like he was dreaming. After 5 years, he finally had a chance to rebuild his professional life. When he got home, he found a surprise. Dorothy was visiting Emily, and the two were chatting animatedly with Barbara. Michael, Emily shouted when she saw him. Grandma brought good news. What news? Dorothy smiled, visibly more energetic since her treatment had been regularized. We got a spot in the government program for Emily's medication. Michael felt a wave of relief and happiness. How so? Barbara stepped forward. Remember we talked to that doctor about the special programs. He sped up Emily's process, and she was approved. Does that mean I can take my medicine again? Emily asked. It means you'll take your medicine forever, Michael answered, hugging her. And there's more, Dorothy continued. The social worker said we'll receive a monthly allowance for other treatment costs. Michael sat down, moved. In just a few weeks, everyone's life had completely changed. Dorothy, Barbara, Emily, you've given me back my life. You're the one who gave us back our lives, Dorothy replied. If you hadn't taken care of Emily that night, and taught me to be brave again, Michael finished. That night, Michael called Ethan to share the news. Dad, that's amazing. You're going back to work as a doctor. Not as a surgeon yet, but it's a start. And Emily will be able to take the medicine? Yes, everything is working out. Dad, can I ask you something? Of course, son. I want to spend my next vacation there with you. I want to help take care of Emily and be closer to you. Michael felt his eyes tear up with happiness. Ethan, that would be the best thing in the world. I already talked to Mum. She agreed. And her? How is she feeling about all this? She said she's never seen you as well as you are now. That Emily has really been good for you. 3 months later, Michael was settled into his new routine at the hospital. He had rented a small house near Barbara's, where he lived with Emily. Dorothy had insisted it would be better this way, since Michael could better care for the girls' medical needs. Ethan spent weekends with them, and entire school vacations. The relationship between father and son grew stronger every day. The review of Michael's case with the medical board was progressing well. Richard had provided detailed testimonies, and other colleagues who were present that day had started telling the truth about what really happened. On a Friday afternoon, Michael came home and found Emily doing physical therapy with a new therapist that Barbara had arranged through her contacts. How was it today? He asked. Great. Dr. Sarah said I'm progressing very well. Look at this. Emily managed to stand holding onto the parallel bars for almost a minute, much longer than before. Emily, that's amazing. It's because of the medicine, right? It's working. It's because of the medicine, the physical therapy, and most of all, your determination. That evening, Michael received an unexpected call. It was Dr. Robert from the hospital. "Michael, I need to speak with you. Can you come here tomorrow?" "Did something happen?" "Nothing serious. In fact, I think it's good news." On Saturday morning, Michael went to the hospital curious about what Robert wanted to discuss. "Michael, have a seat," Robert said, with a serious but not worried expression. "Dr. Robert, I'm anxious to know what this is about. I received a call yesterday from the medical board. Your review has been completed." Michael felt his heart race. "And?" "Michael, you have been officially cleared of all charges. Your license to practice medicine has been fully restored." Michael was silent for a few seconds, processing the information. "Does that mean—" "It means you can go back to performing surgery if you want. It means your reputation has been officially cleared." Michael felt tears streaming down his face. After 5 years carrying the guilt and humiliation, he was finally free. "And there's more," Robert continued. "The family of the patient who died that day. They found out about the review and want to speak with you." "With me? Why?" "Apparently they discovered some things about the circumstances of the patient's arrival at the hospital, things they didn't know at the time." Michael vaguely remembered the family, influential people who had moved heaven and earth to blame him for the patriarch's death. "What did they find out?" "I'd rather let them tell you in person, but Michael, it seems you weren't the only victim in this story." The next day, Michael met with the family of the patient who had passed away. Present were the widow, Mrs. Elizabeth, and the eldest son, William. "Dr. Michael," Mrs. Elizabeth began, visibly emotional, "we owe you an apology." Michael didn't know how to react. "We discovered some things that completely changed our perspective on that day," William continued. "What kind of things?" "My father arrived at the hospital already in critical condition. He had suffered 3 heart attacks at home before being brought here. That was omitted from the initial report." Michael vaguely remembered that the patient's symptoms suggested something like that, but at the time, no one wanted to listen. "And there's more," Mrs. Elizabeth went on. "We found out that someone in our own family altered information in the medical record to hide the fact that they took hours to bring my husband to the hospital." "Why would they do that?" "To cover up negligence on our part, and to find a scapegoat," William replied, ashamed. Michael felt a mix of relief and sadness. Relief that his innocence was being acknowledged, sadness for everything he had unnecessarily lost. "Dr. Michael," Mrs. Elizabeth stood up, "we can't give back the years you lost, but we want to do what we can to make amends." "What do you have in mind?" "First, we will issue a public statement clarifying the facts. Second, we would like to make a significant donation to a cause that is important to you." Michael immediately thought of Emily and other children in similar situations. "There is something you could do that would truly make a difference." "What?" "Do you know a girl named Emily? And there are many other children who need expensive medical treatment. Perhaps you could help create a fund for these cases." Mrs. Elizabeth smiled. "It would be an honor, Doctor." 2 weeks later, the creation of the Elizabeth Johnson Children's Foundation was announced, with an initial donation of 5 million reais. Michael was invited to be the medical director. When he told Emily the news, she reacted in an unexpected way. "Does this mean other kids like me will be able to get treatment?" "That's exactly what it means." "Michael, you saved my life. Now you're going to save the lives of so many other children." "Emily, who saved who here?" She laughed. "We saved each other." On the day of the foundation's official opening, Emily insisted on giving a speech. Michael was nervous. She was still very young, but Barbara convinced him it would be appropriate. "My name is Emily Johnson," she began, into the microphone, addressing an audience of doctors, officials, and journalists. "6 months ago, I was lost in a square, hungry and in need of medicine my family couldn't afford." Michael watched with pride and emotion. "A man who lived on the street shared with me the only piece of bread he had. He didn't know I needed medical help. He just saw a hungry child and wanted to help. The audience was completely silent. "That man is Dr. Michael. He saved me, but not just by giving me food. He saved me by believing in me, taking care of my grandmother, and never giving up on finding a way to help me." Emily paused and looked at Michael. "Today, because of him and the good people he met along the way, I can take my medicine every day. But most importantly, now other children will be able to too." The audience began to applaud. "I want to tell all the sick children who are watching, never stop dreaming. And to all the adults, sometimes the person who needs help the most is the one trying to help others." Michael stood up and hugged Emily with tears in his eyes. The audience stood up too, in an ovation that lasted several minutes. After the event, Emily asked Michael, "Are you happy?" "I'm happier than I ever imagined I could be. Even after all the bad things that happened. Emily, if the bad things hadn't happened, I never would have found you. And you taught me that sometimes we have to go through the dark to reach the light." 6 months later, Michael was operating again. His first surgery after returning was a success, and gradually he resumed his position as one of the most respected heart surgeons in the region. Ethan had decided to spend more time in Denver, studying at a local school and living with Michael and Emily during the week. Jessica, surprisingly, had supported the decision. "Michael has changed," she had said to Barbara. "He's more human, more present. Emily really has been good for him." One Sunday afternoon, Michael found Emily reading a medical book he had bought for her. "Do you really want to be a doctor when you grow up?" "I do. I want to help children like me." "You know it's going to be very hard, right? Many years of studying." "Michael, you taught me that when we really want something and have good people by our side, anything is possible." Michael smiled. Emily always had the right words. "And you, are you happy being a doctor again?" "You know something, Emily. I discovered that being a doctor isn't just about operating on people or giving medicine." "What is it about?" "It's about caring. And I learned how to truly care when I met you. And I learned that there's always someone willing to help when we need it most." At that moment, Ethan walked into the room. "What are you talking about?" "About how good things can come from the most difficult moments," Emily replied. "Like when Dad was living on the street and found you." "Exactly. If he hadn't gone through all that, he might never have seen me in the square." Ethan sat down with them. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you regret anything?" Michael thought for a moment. "I regret giving up, thinking it wasn't worth fighting for. But I don't regret going through the hardships, because they brought me to you." "And I regret my parents abandoning me," Emily said, "but I don't regret it, because that brought me to you too." Michael looked at the two children who had become his family and felt a deep gratitude. Life had given him a second chance, and he was determined not to waste it. 1 year later, Emily took her first steps without support. It was just a few feet, but they were the most important feet of her life. Michael and Ethan were there to see it, as were Barbara, Dorothy, and several members of the medical team overseeing her treatment. "I did it!" Emily shouted, with tears of joy streaming down her face. Michael hugged her, moved. "You always knew you could, only because you taught me to never give up." 2 years after the Foundation's inauguration, Michael had helped more than 300 families get medical treatment for their children. The program had expanded to other cities, and Michael was often invited to speak about his experience. In one of these talks, he always ended by telling the story of how he met Emily. "Sometimes we think we're helping someone, but really that person is saving us. Emily taught me that compassion isn't just giving what we have left over. It's sharing the little that we have. And she taught me that sometimes we need to lose everything to discover what truly matters." Emily, now 10 years old and walking with the help of leg braces, always watched these talks with pride. "Michael always says that I saved him," she said in an interview with a local newspaper. "But the truth is we saved each other, and that's the most beautiful thing in the world, when people help each other without expecting anything in return." End of story. And you, dear listener, what did you think of this story of hope and transformation? Could you see how a simple act of kindness can completely change someone's life? Michael and Emily taught us that even in the darkest moments, there is always a light waiting to be discovered, Life may knock us down many times, but it's our ability to get back up and help one another that makes us truly human. Tell us in the comments, have you ever experienced a moment when a simple gesture made all the difference? And remember to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that touch the heart and show that it's always worth believing in the power of human kindness.